93% of enterprises are developing or piloting custom AI agents, yet only 21% have established clear governance and integration frameworks to really ensure those business alignments, data quality, and operational continuity. My name is Paul Nashawaty, and I'm the practice lead and principal analyst at the AppDevANGLE practice, and I'm joined by Tiago from OutSystems. Tiago, how are you doing today?
I'm great, Paul. Thank you. So my name is Tiago Azevedo, and I'm the CIO for OutSystems. OutSystems is an AI application and agent development platform, and I'm very pleased to join you here today.
Tiago, it's great to have you on. Super important topic. Lots of buzz in the market that's going on around this. People are trying to figure out what to do, how to move forward, how to spend their money, how to use their initiatives on doing things. So in this episode, we're looking to explore agentic AI and how it's reshaping enterprise strategies and operations. As I said, 93% of organizations are developing or planning to deploy custom AI agents, and CIOs are navigating this critical inflection point in the business to balance between short-term efficiency gains with long-term strategic alignment. So there's a lot happening here. So what we plan to talk about on this session, where Tiago and I will get in and dive into how autonomous AI agents are driving measurable business outcomes, and the importance of trust and data governance is key here, but also what it takes to integrate these intelligent systems into complex enterprise environments. So when we look at this, we're looking at sharing these insights and real world examples on how to looking forward into the agentic AI movement beyond organizations and automation towards true problem solving at scale. That's really what we're focused on here. And I'm really excited to have you on, Tiago. So let's jump right in. When we look at the strategic value, right? And I'm going to start with that stat. We looked at 93% of enterprises developing or piloting custom AI agents. This is a demand for rapid results needing to build sustainable AI strategies. So when we look at that, what do strategic guardrails look like in practice when deploying AI agents or agentic agents across complex organizations? And how can leaders really ensure agentic AI initiatives don't just optimize operations, but they drive measurable business outcomes? What are your thoughts here?
So I think that it's pretty much the whole topic of IT strategy in the past was supposed to be linked to the company strategy. The same really applies now for agentic AI. So not just like going after the buzz of a gold rush that exists, but actually picking up the right use cases that will bring that level of impact. So it's literally looking across the board to the company's operations and try to understand where reasoning and all of that artificial intelligence is able to provide significant breakthrough results and impacts.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, the impacts are the measurable business outcomes, right? We're looking at those long-term objectives that organizations are trying to tie to. But this also does come down to the trust and data quality, right? When we look at that, our research shows that only 21% of enterprises have reported having a mature AI data governance framework. So when we look at this, I'm curious myself here was what's holding organizations back from addressing these fundamental issues or foundational issues? And then how can enterprise build trust in autonomous systems to make that, make or recommend critical decisions to move forward?
Yeah, so one thing that AI has been able to surface is the importance of data, because literally that data is what feeds into the intelligence of these artificial brains. And the reality is, if your data wasn't ready before, and you only starting to realize that now, then companies will be sort of like in a little bit of trouble and have to go back and make clean and make that data work somehow. But the reality is, data should already have been supporting human decision making and human operational reviews of the business. And what AI is now being able to do is like literally surfacing kind of like all the gaps that existed in the data before. So that's on one side. The other side, from a governance perspective, as you mentioned, is that agents through tools are able to access multiple sets of data in the company. And you have to put some level of guardrails behind it, because otherwise anyone can build an agent that accesses very strict and confidential information and uses it to do anything that's not proper. So as you build, you have to put that governance in place. And at the same time, you need to structure and let's say clean and make that data operational so that the models are able to generate the right level of value.
I agree. Actually, what we're seeing in our research is we're seeing that there's a tremendous amount of applications being developed, right? And those applications being developed not just by the professional developer, but by the citizen developer, by the lines of businesses. And if we don't have those governance and controls in place, that's going to cause a lot of challenges within organizations on just data quality and governance. But I guess I'll ask one more question on this: is what do you think the best practices are for, or emerging frameworks do you recommend for really maintaining those data quality and governance as AI agents become more really autonomous and how they're working together? I know that right now I'm a strong believer today that a human in the loop is important, but I think that there's also an element of trying to move to that operational efficiencies where you have to have less and less human touch. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, so we are big supporters, and I'm a big supporter of that human in the loop for sure. That as you structure the work that those agents perform, usually they'll be operating on smaller sets of data, and that the sort of like the data problem would be surfacing on a data set by data set basis, which would allow you to kind of like deep dive into the problem that you have. And usually it's like going back to the operation and the process and fix that problem. Sometimes what the AIs have been able to do is also being able to apply some level of intelligence to try to understand the gap itself. And by understanding the gap, being able to do some level of correlation for you. I think that from a best practice perspective, it's literally like segregating that amount of data on a block by block or domain by domain and going after sort of like on a phased approach into smaller problems rather than the big problems. It's almost like decomposing a huge problem into smaller boxes.
Yeah, I like that. I take a kind of a crawl, walk, run approach, right? It's like understand what you want to work on. And I usually say, use the term, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time, right? It's like it's that kind of approach. But I agree with you that, organizations shouldn't take on more than they need to move forward. But, so let's kind of dissect that a little bit. When we look at our research and we talk about integration as part of this, our research shows that integration complexity is one of the top challenges for 64% of enterprises deploying these AI agents, right? So when we look at that, what are the biggest pitfalls organizations face when embedding AI into existing tech stacks? And how important is an API first or modular architecture really in ensuring business continuity during the AI integration? What are your thoughts there?
Well, like I'm very in aligned with that kind of like train thought and line of thought. So before agentic came in place, there has been a huge trend over the years to moving to service-oriented architectures, composability, modularity, and API first / all systems are open and accessible, and that's the best way to manage enterprise architectures. What I do strongly believe that agentic has added is an additional layer on top of all of these. So if you have a composable architecture that is highly integratable and modular, when you added the agents on top, everything's going to work in a super seamless and smooth operating way. The problem resides that if you don't have that, then you do find a ton of barriers into be able to add agentic on top, because it's almost like playing with a messy architecture underneath. So the line of thought that you were putting in place is, for me, one of the most critical ones, which is have your architecture well structured, modular, with all the sets of APIs that you need, and accessible so that you can add the agentic layer on top.
Yeah, I like that. And you've been doing this for quite some time. The early stages of AI adoption, and OutSystems has been kind of one of the at the forefront of leading this effort. I guess one of the questions I would like to ask you around something you can share with the audience is, are there lessons from being in the early adopter stages that you can help others avoid AI sprawl across disconnected systems? Because that's a big challenge.
Yeah, so like we kind of like always had this level of startup vibe and approach into almost everything that we do. But in the case of AI, I actually don't even know how to do it any differently, which is we always followed an approach for innovation that allows us to start small. That's what usually it's been called the MVP. Think big and then scale fast. And scaling fast means iterating 100, 1,000, a million times on top of a certain product as you make that product more and more effective. So if you could potentially develop an application using sort of like a waterfall approach or even an agile one with sprints and so on, for AI, I just don't think that works, because there's a lot of unknown out there and you have to pivot something. You have to pivot that fast. You have to learn. You have to iterate on that learning, incorporate that in a short and closed feedback loop, and then iterate back again. And as you do that, you keep on learning as you produce that forward. That has been the key to almost every single AI experiment that we have done. And I kind of like became to the point that I don't even know how to do it any differently. And I don't think it will work differently, to be honest.
Yeah, I hear you. I agree. I think that, I was having this conversation on another call and another discussion where we were talking about the release cycle of AI applications and workflows and such. And it's changed, right? I mean, whether you're doing agile or waterfall approaches, it's really different, right? It's like, I brought into the conversation the terms of, DevOps release cycle or MLOps release cycle is different than agile or the historical ways of doing agile development or waterfall development in the past. And with AI, it's changing very dramatically. And, we're seeing that code is in applications are being requested by organizations to be released on an hourly and daily basis, right? And sometimes multiple times throughout the day. So that's a very rapid updating. And so, but as we look beyond automation, right, we see that early adopters, they're reporting 40% reduction in decision latency through AI, agentic AI. What types of use cases are you seeing that are showing strongest returns from this shift? And how do agentic systems differ from traditional automation and the ability to adapt reason, adaptation, and contextual decision making? How is that changing?
So, traditional automation was sort of like all about efficiency. It was taking a manual task and making it faster.
Right.
What agentic AI does, it changes completely the game. It's about autonomy. These are systems that can reason about goals, context, intent, and then decide how to act and not just what to execute. That shift, that is like following instructions to solving problems, it's what unlocks entirely new levels of impact in enterprises. I'll give you a few examples of things that we're doing. So for example, in sales, our account research agent, we call it DealMate, gathers insights from CRM, open web, prior communications with that account, identifies buying signals, and even recommends tailored outreach strategies. It doesn't just execute the script, it interprets and adjusts actions based on each account story. In customer success and support, classic automation would probably categorize a ticket. Agentic AI now reasons across telemetry, knowledge bases, and is even able to answer a customer inquiry. In finance, early adopters are using AI to reconcile accounts, forecast spend, or flag anomalies. This is what cuts decision latency by up to 40% in most cases. I think that we'll look back and realize that kind of like automation was the warm-up act, and that agentic is kind of like the thing that's going to bring unparalleled business value
Yeah,
ever before.
I love the way you frame that up, and the use cases you explain there really kind of bring it home to me. I get how you're using it and how it's being done in a real world example. So, but let's take a look at the future outlook here, right? As enterprises are accelerating agentic AI adoption, where do you see the biggest opportunities to transform in the next 3 years? And what risks should organizations anticipate as they operationalize intelligence at scale? Because I mean, these are challenges that organizations are running into. And also for the audience listening, this is where if they're thinking about where they should hedge their bets on when they should put their investments, this is a good kind of discussion to have here.
Yeah, so like linking back the use cases I just mentioned to sort of like your initial question on how do you like kind of like link the agentic AI adoption approach to the company strategy. Being a tech company in the tech space, growth is an important factor for us, as so is to keep a good operating margin. So the majority of the use cases we pick are focused on bringing more revenue, and to a certain extent also kind of like remove manual repeatable labor that basically just slows us down from an efficiency perspective. So what I see over the next years is a huge investment in looking at these use cases that will bring the biggest amount of value to the enterprises, and that's like linking as most directly as possible to that those kind of like levers that assess the company's performance, which I said in our case is like growth and margin. Once you do that, and you do that repeatedly, you like create and put all the probes in the right places so that you can measure that level of impact. And that's where the impactful business outcomes you're going to achieve. So for example, I use the example of sales. We want to move opportunities through the sales cycle better, smarter, with better conversion rates and quicker as ever. And that's how we hope to generate an impact. When you look at operations only, what we are looking is to replace work that didn't have any value before, but done by agents, and being replaced on those cases by the work that humans were doing, so that they can focus on the right value creation activities. So that's sort of like what I think is going to happen in the future.
Yeah, I agree. I think that there's a lot there to think about. I would also hope and expect governance and policy frameworks to really keep up with the pace of innovation and not lag behind what enterprises are doing in deployment and development. But Tiago, we're coming to the end of our session. We talked about a lot here. I think it's very relevant in the world of agentic AI and application development, and where organizations are going and how they're looking to go. What would you advise the audience to? Where would you advise them to go to learn more about how they can, get going on this, regardless where they are in their maturity? If they're just starting or if they're very mature, where would you advise them to go?
Well, we've been investing a lot of time and effort on building thought leadership, bringing other companies and customers into conversations with us about this topic, and providing as many use cases as possible, so that we are able to inspire the whole world. So I would say www.outsystems.com is a great source of material to start going, I would say, and be able to learn how and where to move next.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate that. I think that's really a good way to start educating yourselves, so these organizations educate themselves on how to move forward in their next step in their journey. Tiago, thank you again for joining us in our webcast today and our podcast today. It's really been insightful and informative. I think that the audience will get a lot out of just some of the thought process of what we're thinking about here. And a big thank you to all of you who've tuned in. We really appreciate you being part of the AppDevANGLE community. But for now, that wraps up this episode. But we'll be back next Wednesday with another conversation diving into the tools, trends, and talents shaping the future of application development. So whether you're deploying at the edge, building it with AI, or modernizing your cloud stack, we've got you covered. Be sure to follow us on social if you have any thoughts, questions, or just want to connect. Until next time, stay curious and stay building.